All right. Welcome to the study group. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Derek.
Welcome, everyone at home. Thanks for always joining us. And like the topic of the study today, which is the authentic self, I'd just like to be really authentic right now and say that it's been a while, so I might be a little rusty and mess something up. But bear with us, and we're doing our best.
We'll do the best we can.
Yeah. So, Chuck, just want to thank you for doing a lot of work on this. It's been maybe, almost a month since we got to do a study group. So
time flies.
Time flies when we're busy, and it's busy times, and there's a lot of cool things coming up. So trying to get it all done is a lot of work. It's a task. We'll just say that. So like I said, the name of this study is The Authentic Self. Mm-hmm. Put Authentic Self up there in the corner. And this is really something that we started talking about, a couple weeks ago, of what it means to be authentic and to stay loyal to your authenticity in your interactions, in yourself, with divinity, all of it, so that we can maintain health and bring abundance in life. Mm-hmm. And I went down this rabbit hole of physical health in relation to the loss of authenticity for the individual. So when somebody maybe suppresses their authentic needs in a way that they feel they might lose an association with another individual, like if they're not themselves, then they might still keep this friendship. But if they are themselves, then they might lose this association.
The temptation to sacrifice your authenticity out of fear.
Right. Ridicule, fear, anything, trauma from the past, whatever it is. But I think it really happens in these fundamental early childhood stages with our parents. And if we learn to deny our basic fundamental needs like food, water, affection, things like that. Attention, yeah. Because the other individual is maybe not stable. And so we've learned very early that we might potentially forfeit our relationship with this individual if we don't adhere and compromise to what their needs are. And that means then suppressing our basic.
So that's a problem with life on this planet. We tend to go through a lot of misadaptations where we try to adapt to situations that are not ideal. I mean, in an ideal home with ideal parents, none of those problems would be a problem so much, because we'd be encouraged and we'd be loved and we'd be known, and all of that would keep us kind of on a good path of growth. Yeah. But when problems come up, like you're talking about, then we have to kind of start to almost like reparent ourselves.
Right.
And it's interesting to me that authenticity is such a issue in the culture right now. And that's part of what's inspiring this. It's not a term that shows up in the Urantia Book, but there's a whole constellation of values that surround it that Dar talked about very much. But that it's so current in the culture. I mean, this is almost like what people want more than anything else is on authenticity, because they realize that's where you're true to yourself. That's where you're really opening up your true potentials.
Right. And what I'm finding with this, personally from my experience, is authenticity is having integrity to your identity.
It's a good way of putting it.
And so you're truly reflecting the integrity of your identity. And if you have denied your basic needs, then it's hard for you to develop an identity, I think, because you're not giving yourself the attention that's required to have a healthy, balanced personality and character. And so then that way you might be more externally identified.
That's always the danger.
Yeah.
You lose trust in what's within you. So you start looking to external validations.
And that's fleeting. That's not solid foundation. That's why we really started our studies with the identity of the kingdom within, going within, identifying with your soul, transferring your seat of identity from, this material identity, intellectual self to the soul self, to this eternal self.
And that you can trust that because God lives within us.
Right.
We just have to find that spiritual resource within ourselves.
My friends, is what being authentic is knowing that you have a creator within you that you are working with, and you're not beholden to the environment so much that you can now create a design that can uplift.
Mm-hmm. And have a relationship, a real relationship that you can trust, where you can be as vulnerable as you need to be. You can really, talk about anything with God and know that there's God is listening and taking care, and all these spiritual agencies that surround us are also wanting to help us.
And when you do that, God knows when you're not being authentic. But that's the time to be authentic. I mean, nobody's around you if you're afraid of ridicule.
Right. And those are the times of crisis.
Yeah.
When you're like at your wit's end, or maybe even feeling desperate about who knows what. That's when it's like, okay, God, let's talk.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the most authentic place to be. But we can be that way with each other too. And we can grow from that as a foundation. And that's what's so fascinating about this topic, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's just maybe, since the Urantia book doesn't really say authenticity, we kind of pulled out some terms that really reflect authenticity that the Urantia book talks about that we've used. So maybe check if you want to go over some of this.
Yeah, so these, I was fascinated to go online and look up definitions of authenticity to see what the world thinks this is about. And I was fascinated, as I said, to discover there's such a complex constellation of meaning associated with this term. And the origin of it, you can see that the word author is almost in there as the root. So authorship is kind of at the root of authenticity. So genuine authorship. That's kind of where it comes from. But then associated with it are all these other values and qualities. And I think what's interesting about these, and that we're going to see, is not only are they highly desirable, both in ourselves and in the people, that we meet and want to have relationships and work with, but all of these are true of Jesus. So we're going to be kind of looking at Jesus as a reference, as an example of an expression of human authenticity joined with divinity. But I'll just read these, and let's try to keep them in mind as we're talking about this. Okay. So there's the quality of being real and true. So being real, the Urantia book talks about that, how we become more real as we become closer to God. Expressing conviction and confidence. So to have conviction, to have determination and confidence in what you believe in, you need the underlying inner conviction to express outer conviction. So authenticity often takes the form of expression. We talk about someone being authentic when they talk. So that's a really important aspect of it. But there's also this richness of presence. I think that's really interesting. So if you know somebody who's like really authentic, like a friend or mentor who somebody's important in your life, you probably notice there's a richness about their presence that you just enjoy being with them. Yeah. And that was certainly true of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Then there's honest of heart. That's like, okay, you can trust someone's heart. You can trust their motives. You can trust the goodness of their intentions. All that whole constellation of realized values in human.
Also for yourself.
And for yourself to be able to, yes, exactly. To be honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's maybe the hardest thing to do, or to be honest with God. And then true to oneself. That's closely related to that. Someone who's true to themselves. Then unpretentious, bona fide. I love that. Bona fide meaning like true to oneself. So unpretentious, bona fide, and then these last two are super important, and we're going to be focusing on them a fair amount. One is original. These last two are original and sincere. So it's fascinating to get into how authenticity is related to originality.
Creativity.
Creativity, yes. And then the expression of that, the sharing of that to be really effectively received, sincerity is a big part of that, which is also a big factor in our relationship with God and with each other, in our growth and everything else. So absolutely, all of these are going to flow into our discussion of the quotes that we're going to look at from the book. So
yeah, we're kind of evolving in our study here, trying to. So we're kind of breaking our slides down into some topics of study within the authentic self, just themes of how we broke it down. So 4 basic themes. We're going to break it down of the first is the example of Jesus, the living example of Jesus, as we like to always have. The second is originality and confidence in authenticity. And then human self-expression, how we kind of use authenticity within ourselves.
How we develop that.
Yeah. And then love and sincerity.
Our qualities of authenticity as well.
Right.
So this will give us a good overview, give us some interesting comments from the book to talk about that relate to our development. This is all part of self-development, working on ourselves. We're always doing that. And authenticity we can almost hold that out as a standard or as a goal to always try to live up to.
Yeah.
But it's we grow. It can't happen all at once, and we do have to overcome oftentimes this is where the spiritual and the psychological intersect in very interesting ways, and that's clear from the book, and in many places in the book where that becomes clear that the spiritual and the psychological are intimately related, and self-mastery is kind of the bridge that brings them together. When we can overcome obstacles and then master ourselves so that we can then become more like God.
Yeah, only in the arena of mind can we choose to become like God or not.
Right.
Can we choose to take control of the mind, grab the reins of the mind, and the mind is there to work for you.
Exactly. And that's our arena of decision making. And it's also our arena of evaluation that informs our decisions. And that's where the spirit comes in. So to know that in this mind arena, we have resources that we originate in a sense, but we also have resources that are given to us.
Yeah. And if I'd like to add just to that, part of the resources that are given to us is that there's a spirit feeling. And I think that, we talk about the mind where we can make these choices. With authenticity can be a feeling too, and it should be a feeling, at least it is in my life, of when I'm going back to the center of everything that is spirit, that is my authentic self, the same thing is feeling a deep, deep breath all the way down from the base of my existence, all the way through my heart, through my mind, through the spirit that's around me, so that those can all be balanced with one another. And that's me being authentic. And if I can express from that self, that's my true self.
Yes. Yes. Right. And you can feel that. I remember more from when I was younger, but there's this feeling of being self-conscious. You know that term? Where you feel almost embarrassed about yourself, or you're afraid to speak, or you don't have confidence in your ability to really be what you think you ought to be. There's this, that's a problem of youth particularly, but it can carry over into adulthood too. But overcoming that self-consciousness, not just by force, I'm going to make all these people listen to what I have to say, or deal with me, or whatever. Instead, there's almost like an art to it, where you understand there's self-mastery issues involved, and then you can have true confidence because God is with you. It's kind of a partnership thing, and
it becomes more fun.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say this painting.
Oh yeah, well, it's kind of a good representation of it. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, let's do that, because I think it kind of speaks to what you were saying and what we're both talking about.
So
here.
Let me just say, this is the Storm Pilot. This is the way, and this is a great painting by Steve Sawyer, who we had on Spirit of Truth. He's an awesome guy, and you can check out more of his artwork at artforgod.com. It's up in the corner right there. He's a great guy too. If you ever get to see him on Facebook, he does a podcast called Closet Church.
Oh, cool.
Where he live streams on Facebook every morning.
Wow, amazing.
Really authentic guy.
Yeah, very. Yeah, I met him. He's great.
So anyway, you want to talk about this one?
Well, just quickly, this painting. I love this painting because there's so much in this painting about how we're not alone. That particularly Jesus in this case is by our side. And the thing that we've talked about so much about Jesus is he's been human. So he's divine, he's God, but he's also been human. So we have deity presence on this planet that's been human ever since ever since that period. So here we have someone young and with Jesus by his side, guiding him through the storm, helping him. He's not doing it for him, but he's there with him. So there's something kind of beautiful and wonderful about that aspect of our relationship with God.
Yeah, just a subline. Steve subtitled this is the way. So the storm pilot, this is the way. I just couldn't fit it in there. But as you can see him pointing out the way. And I just find it kind of interesting how the spirit of truth works. And that even in mainstream media, there's like productions where this is the way is a big saying. Like Disney has a production out that this is the way is something that has a lot of value. And I think that's something that just resonates in someone's heart that you feel. And that's Jesus being there for you. No matter what your construct of belief might be, the spirit of truth is talking to all of us.
Right.
It's just what I found in my experience is that the voice of deity is very polite and it's very kind. And it's not going to try to speak over you like you were just saying. And the self-mastery on deity's level is off the charts. We can't quite fathom what that is. But with it comes such politeness and respect.
And caring.
And care, yeah. I mean, I feel that impoliteness is caring because I care enough to be polite to you.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Well, yeah.
But if we are not being authentic to that kind, polite voice, then we're kind of turning it into a lecture mode and we're not hearing where the kind presence is telling us this is the way.
Right.
And this is where we lose our authenticity because in our real authentic self, we have this truth, the spirit of truth with us, showing us the way. And if we can kind of go back to authenticity, there's a space for the spirit of truth to work with us.
Right. If that's our desire, and if we're seeking that with God, that to me is what's so wonderful about this painting, because it's demonstrating or illustrating that we can achieve our own authenticity in partnership with God, listening for that still small voice, that guidance from within that says this is the way, but we still have to take the steps.
Right.
God is not walking in our shoes. We are.
Yeah. Jesus doesn't have the wheel there.
Right. He doesn't. He's right. Exactly. He's not controlling the wheel. He's not trying to take the wheel away. Yeah. Don't do that. Go over here.
Give me the wheel. Not right. Jesus.
But instead, he's like pointing.
Right.
That's the other thing that's so cool in this painting is the idea that the deity points. It kind of gives us a leading. They talk about the inner spirit.
It enlightens.
Leading us. Yeah, or guiding us. Yeah. And Jesus is more of a guiding influence. So if we respond to that, if we open ourselves up to that, if we pay attention to that possibility, it will be there for us. And that guidance about this is the way always has to do with values. In other words, if we can feel the values that are relevant to the decision that has to be made, then we can make the decision ourselves. We can figure it out.
And I still feel with that, the values are really something that comes from having you have your identity. And knowing your identity, you can be authentic to your identity. And in your identity, you have a sense of values that spring from that identity. From that authentic identity. Yeah. And in there, you formulate a purpose. And you have a purpose of how I'm going to push out these values. And in that purpose, you then have a creative expression.
Yeah, you're kind of like on a mission.
You have this function, this functionality forms, and then it takes form, right? Right. But it's all reflective of these values that are reflective of authentic self, of identity, because your authentic self is creative and with spirit, co-creative with spirit. That's your authentic self in your unique way.
Exactly. Right. And the formation of that identity is crucial to this whole process of growth.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that in mind as we go through these.
All right. Yeah, we went down a little hole, but it's important.
But keep that painting in mind as we go forward, because I think it's a good inspirational reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Right.
That we do have Jesus by our side.
And you can always just look to him and
exactly. He's like our companion. He's like a companion. The Father's Spirit lives within us, whereas the Spirit of the Son, Jesus, kind of is with us, more like a companion presence. And then underlying and permeating all of this is the presence of the Mother Spirit as well.
Literally in that water that you're navigating.
She's like the water, she's the boat, she's
the air,
she's your body, she's your mind,
So that's another thing that I think, when we do breathe deeply, I know there's a lot of yoga and meditation practices of the deep breath, the chakra system or whatever, but remember when you're breathing Mother Spirit.
Yeah, literally.
You're breathing the breath of life within you and balance yourself from the core, from the base, all the way through the heart, through the mind, through the mouth, the spirit, through the heart.
Yeah.
Like those are all working together, and that's real authenticity.
Yes, indeed.
Well, let's go now into the demonstration of Jesus being this way, shall we?
Sure, let's do.
Okay. So this is just Midwayer's commentary on Jesus. And they say, on both friends and foes, he exercised a strong and peculiarly fascinating influence. Multitudes would follow him for weeks just to hear his gracious words and behold his simple life. I like this quote. I picked this quote out because there's something in the picture of it that is really touching to me that, Jesus, the Urantia Book goes into a little bit of detail of the stature of him as a man and how strong and good looking or whatever this guy was. But I think that what they did is to create this picture of such a strong individual that you might think might win the day for this man. But he's actually such a kind, polite, caring, expressive, creative, fun-loving individual in such a simple manner that people were awestruck by that. And it's a counterintuitive thing, but it still reflects the nature of deity that I was talking about, of how kind and polite they are.
Right. And how appealing and attractive.
Yeah.
And fascinating. I mean, these people would follow him just to hear his words and behold his life, just to watch him. It must have been something, even just the way his posture and the way he moved his body and the way he picked things up and set things down. It's like, wow.
Look at him tie his sandal.
Right. But through this shows the power of authenticity. In a sense, that's what was so intriguing.
He was being authentic, and that was really attractive.
Yeah, his nature was, very much that way. And that's part of what made him so attractive and so appealing. But even his enemies, they say, it's interesting, they say both friends and foes. He had this peculiar, it's a hard word to say, peculiarly fascinating influence. So you have the midwayers watching all this go down and seeing how people were responding to him. And it was not just his friends, but his foes too. They were all like, what's going on with this guy?
Yeah.
But then when it comes down to it, there's a simplicity at the heart of it. That's what's, to me, a really important aspect of this concept of authenticity, that it's not complicated. It doesn't mean you have to be this like super complicated person. I mean, at the heart of who you are, at the heart of your identity, there's a kind of a simplicity.
I would also say that the heart of your identity has already been given to you for free. So it's not like you have to like complicate things to make it better.
Right.
It's there. Those are the gifts that we give thanks for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, that was cool. It reminds me of Bruce Lee. I know I always go back to Bruce Lee, but I mean, he says, keep that which is useful and discard that which isn't. And he always talked about authentic self-actualization and authentic self-expression.
Oh, he talked about that.
Oh, without a doubt. Saying that this is I could do some fancy kicks in your face and get all cocky. But for me to express myself honestly, to truly be authentic to myself, that's a challenge for all of us, because we have to maintain this authenticity no matter how intense the environment gets. And that's a true art. That's real martial arts. That's being loving and transcending the environment. It's like, it's alchemy in a way with love, that you're not destroying the environment. You've creatively transcended it and transformed it into something good. Right.
Where you're true to your own terms of engagement, that you have your own purposes. as you engage.
And knowing that the Supreme has purposes too.
Right. And that's
and
part
this
of
individual as well in front of me.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Polite ass kicking. Just kidding.
Well, sometimes we have to do that to ourselves too.
Yes. Yeah, man, that's another thing he says, kick your own butt. And if you're lucky, you'll defeat a lot of those bad things like fear, envy, jealousy, pride.
Yeah, right. Well, the book speaks over and over to the importance of our determination.
Yeah.
The strength of our will and our determination.
Tenacity. And
our willingness to do whatever is necessary to achieve what we know is true and good and beautiful.
Well, that's cool. Let's talk about another feature of Jesus's life then. In this one, it's another commentary from the Midwares. And they say, the unique feature of the Master's personality was not so much its perfection as its symmetry, its exquisite and balanced unification. So that's kind of what I feel of first being conscious of what you are, and then having your practice of how you balance that in your own control, your own creative personality direction. And then that hopefully comes out expressed in a pattern that has symmetry. But this is our ideal here is Jesus's symmetry and his personality pattern. But he's also whispering in our corner, in our shoulder all the time of like, yo, here's the pattern over there. There's the pattern over there.
Yeah, so right.
There's guidance in following this example as well in our own unique ways.
Yeah, maintaining balance. I mean, you talk about Bruce Lee or anybody who works with their body. It could be a dancer. It could be anyone who expresses through their physical form. You have to have that. It's a dynamic balance. Doesn't mean you're standing still, but you're conscious of what's going on over here, why something's going on over there, and it's all kept. There's a unity that's
I like the balance of self-control and being a part of something blending with spirit.
Right.
So you're controlling your personality, controlling your mind to blend with something greater. Right.
To engage purposefully and constructively with the potentials in any situation. Has a lot to do with that. And with Jesus and his personality, they would talk about how, well, he was this way, but he was also that way.
Right.
There was this, but then there was that. It was like never all just this or all just that. He was kind, but then he could also be stern when he had to be.
I think that's important because, especially like during the past political season, I felt good about maintaining my authenticity of not jumping into the lack of balance of perspective of the view of society and always standing by my brethren, like Jesus says, and not getting lost into the fickleness of the changing attitudes of the people or like important men. Because I think maintaining authenticity especially if we're blessed enough to have Jesus's teachings, we can be authentic to that. And there's always value in standing by your family, your brothers and sisters under God, and not and maintaining that balance in doing that loving character versus I'm all this way, and anybody who isn't this way, you're not my brother.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's tolerance.
Yeah, and that takes a creative, loving nature that can transcend the environment that is telling you not to do that.
Forgiving tolerance, even the willingness to forgive. There are some examples here. Let's see. He was... Oh,
did you look up that part?
Yeah, I just looked up that section. It says he was so practical in all his ministry, while his plans were characterized by such sanctified common sense. He was free from freakish, erratic, and eccentric tendencies. He was never capricious, whimsical, or hysterical. In all his teaching and in everything he did, there was always an exquisite discrimination associated with an extraordinary sense of propriety. And maybe that can kind of describe a little bit about what you're talking about. They said he was always a well-poised personality, imaginative but practical. Frankly, faced the realities of life, but he was never dull or prosaic. So these are examples of the balance. So when you're engaging with the world, sometimes we need to do a little of this and a little of that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to listen, but we also need to be able to interpret.
Well, that was part of what he came up head to head with the Jewish elders or the Hebrew elders. Was they were all one way. They're like, you veer too far from the tradition and the laws.
Yeah, it was very rules based.
Yeah, and we're unpredictable for us.
You're unpredictable. Yeah, exactly. So that's where the freedom comes in.
Right.
Where we can be free to be unpredictable.
Free to be our authors of our own unpredictable, awesome storyline.
Right. As long as we're not.
As long as it's not unbridled self-liberty, because nobody likes that, man.
That's the big difference.
Yeah. You're not God. You're working with God, and he's going to work with you if you're polite like him. So let's all be polite, shall we?
Okay.
All right. Well, I've got another quote here. And this kind of goes more into the originality and confidence of authenticity.
Yeah, having confidence in our own originality.
Right. Going within and knowing that there's good stuff there, man, that's going to come out. And having confidence in that. And if you don't really have confidence that you can draw back on of that experience of going within and having something good come out, then at least you can have faith that if you do that, something good will come out.
And that you can learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
That there's always a path of recovery too.
Right. Redemption.
Yeah.
All day. Okay. So this is Jesus speaking. And he says, I have come into the world to proclaim spiritual liberty to the end that mortals may be empowered to live individual lives of originality and freedom before God. So this is Jesus's main message here. If he was going to have a Twitter update, this is what it would say. And it would be like, time to be original, everyone. But originality and freedom before God.
Before God.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you come before God. It means that you are offering this to God.
Right.
You are sharing this with God.
Right. In the presence of God, we have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true freedom that's related to our sense of other people and our fraternal obligations and our duties and whatnot.
True liberty and authentic self.
Yes.
An authentic self is this familyhood of God.
Right.
So there's true liberty in understanding, accepting, and choosing to grow within that family. Right. Identifying with that family.
Right. And looking within for that. So what's really being contrasted here is with, as we were hinting at, it was with the Lucifer rebellion, where the message was unbridled self-assertion.
Right.
Where there is no God. So
do what thou wilt.
You're only accountable, to yourself.
Yeah.
And that the thing about that's so insidious is that it actually takes away your true freedom, because you then become attached and beholden to what's outside of yourself.
Well, absolutely. And just to read this last one, Jesus, he exhorted his hearers to strive for originality, and how that is contradiction. And actually the truth to what you were just saying of the Lucifer rebellion is that him talking about all minds are equal,
Lucifer.
Yeah.
Right.
And so here, how are you going to have originality within that? Because you don't see a path for you to navigate to be unique and still be part of something
that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to sacrifice, just like we started. You don't have to sacrifice your basic identity and your fundamental needs in order with this fear that you're going to lose out on a greater connection of relationship. Because the truth is, you're in the family already.
Right.
And the more you can realize that, the more authentic you are, and the more you can then contribute within that family.
Mm-hmm. Right. That we have these eternal relationships that grow into the future, and with God especially, and with each other as well. And that within those relationships, there's an unfolding potential that is really the true value of freedom. It's to be able to make original contributions to the evolving, like the Supreme. The evolution and development of the Supreme requires our originality to make that meaningful. And
feel good about that contribution too, because I think there are authentic contributions and authentic happiness and authentic joy. And effort doesn't always yield real joy, but authentic, intelligent effort does. Like real service, real creativity from your authentic self with God. That's where you can find happiness. That's where you can feel like you've accomplished something and you're contributing now to a bigger organization than just
a big project,
the big me pity party.
Yeah, right, you know right. Yeah. There were a couple of quotes I didn't include here, but they point out that both our personality and our Father's Spirit that lives within us, both of those are of original nature. So the most fundamental aspects of who we are, in a sense, and our potential, the adjuster, the spirit present within us is our kind of like our potential identity. That's the identity we're growing into. And our personality is what enables us to make decisions and have will and to function as we, enables us to grow. And both of those gifts are of original nature. So it's inherent in us. This gift of originality is inherent in us. We just have to exercise it, recognize it, look for it, appreciate it, be thankful for it, all those things, and it'll grow.
Yeah, and it will become your practice.
It'll become, yes.
And let me just go right into this next one.
Sure.
Believers like you and me react to this temporal life as if immortality already were within their grasp. In the lives of such mortals, there is a valid originality and a spontaneity of expression that forever segregate them from those of their fellows who have imbibed only the wisdom of the world.
Right.
That's deep philosophy, but still, I think that we have a tendency to where we get excited about the wisdom of the world without understanding the true value of the immortal soul that's within us and developing.
Exactly. It goes back to this idea of being externally defined.
Right.
If you allow your identity to be externally defined, you're going to be limited to what the world has to give you,
which is dust,
which is not always, Whereas this kind of religion that they're talking about here, and again, this is personal religion, not institutional religion.
Right.
We have this potential for valid originality and spontaneity of expression.
Yeah, I wish more people could see when those real authentic spontaneity, expression, creative moments happen, that's religion.
Yeah.
They're living their religion right there.
That's true religion.
Yeah. I wish they could grasp that. And it's, it's up to us. We're sharing that.
Right.
But it's not like you're going to church, It's not like you're repeating a phrase or a prayer.
Right.
This is new and spontaneous and boom, and it feels great. It going through you.
Right.
If we could then, anchor that to under a psychological understanding that this is real spirit work here.
Right. This is the spirit within us. Right. Exactly.
Well, I've got one more quote here that I want to read. And it's kind of a bit of, to me, it's a little bit more of a redemption, because I always like when they talk about quotes of us being in isolation and they're like, but don't worry, it's good.
Right. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, dude. I like it because you take on this practice where it's like, I'm not going to hurt myself, but I'm going to put myself in challenging situations so I can grow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And this planet is that.
Right. Yeah. Guess what? You're born on it. So, joke's on you. You get used to it.
So this is about appreciating that.
Yeah. Okay. So the isolation of these spheres affords their races a unique opportunity for the exercise of faith and for the development of a peculiar quality of confidence in cosmic reliability, which is not dependent on sight or any other material consideration. So, yes, the peculiar confidence that comes from a faith-tested individual.
Where you have to trust your inner spirit to really find success and to find positive engagement.
And then it's not just like, oh, yeah, God is doing his work or whatever. It's like feeling and living in a way that is already walking that path of the confidence of not so much my material looks are looking good right now, but it's the confidence of I'm loved and held, and we're going to do something good together with deity here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then that unfolds the pattern with then usually comes out in a smile or a good look that's more attractive or whatever it is on the material
loving
side.
Attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what gets expressed material, but the spirit is really what's feeding and fueling that.
Mm-hmm.
And your choice to blend with that.
Right. And just for clarification, this quote is talking about spheres, worlds like this one that are isolated due to the rebellion.
Right.
So on these worlds like this one, there is no visible celestial presence or superhuman presence. We don't have superhuman beings living with us on the planet that we can point to and learn from as a living example. That's all been lost. So that's why there's this feeling of orphanhood, or this feeling like our planet is isolated, and people even question whether there's life in the universe beyond this planet because we are isolated, and that's a result of this quarantine. So what they're saying here is that because of that, we have to rely more on our inner resources to find spirit.
The inner broadcast, the inner emergency broadcast.
Exactly. And that's going to make us stronger.
Yeah.
Put us in a special category even going forward.
Well, you know me, I have a degree in journalism, and that's why it's like I learned how to be authentically objective in my journalism. Mm-hmm. And that's why I do this, because I'm just going to talk and read the text. Like, this is authentic as I can get as far as reporting on the revelation.
You're right.
You know,
and through our experiences,
and then with the experience,
why it's meaningful, why it's important.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like I get frustration when too many people, even my elders, try to tell me that I'm off base because I'm not reflecting the collective ideology of the world.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
and so I just ask that we can all be a little bit more authentic to the inner broadcast as we are to the outer broadcast.
Right.
But Chuck, you got some quotes here. You want to?
Well, I think you got one more.
I do?
Oh, no, you don't. That's it. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
great.
I'm on it, baby.
You're all over it. Okay, I'm up.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this from the perspective of human self-expression.
Right.
So that's what that's sort of boots on the ground, brings it home for each of us. That's what our lives
are. Yeah, this is tangible now.
Our ability to communicate, to be authentic with others, and so forth. So this quote here is from the paper in the book about the celestial artisans. So they're talking about artistic expression here and what it takes to make it true and authentic as an artist, to express something true and authentic. So this is particularly meaningful to me as an artist. So they say that expressions of the divine urge within the evolving creature may be intellectually true, emotionally beautiful, and spiritually good, but the real soul of expression is absent unless these realities of truth, meanings of beauty, and values of goodness are unified in life experience. And I think it's just so intriguing because the values can be there, but this soul of expression, I mean, that's kind of the closest the book gets to talking about authenticity.
That was one of the definitions that we used there.
Yeah.
For defining authenticity.
Well, it didn't even come up on that list because
we were going through it.
You're right.
This soul of expression.
The soul of expression. So like you think of like a blues player or somebody. I mean, that's a classic example. But a musician or even an artist, a painter, or any type of artist, if there's something about, say they've got soul, man. They've got soul. And then usually, if you look at the life of such a person, it's not just about sitting all day and practicing their instrument. You know, that may be part of it, but there's also a lot of life experience that brings soul into their music.
Yeah, you don't get the blues for free, man.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But we can feel it. And when a musician has that quality in their playing, it's like, wow.
And like you were saying, I think people can bring that quality of soul expression into their presence with who they are. Like when we started this show, we were talking about Jesus having that deep quality character. where it's the soul is expressing itself right here in real time, coming out. And so whatever a person like that chooses to express is usually going to have such a quality to it, a nature to it that is really good.
Yeah.
You know,
it's solid. It's rooted in real life experience. It's like even if they're playing music or making a painting, they're saying something about their life. They're expressing something that is true and meaningful and inspiring to others as well. But it takes getting through real life experiences
and then being honest about it.
Right.
That's the inspiration part, is the authenticity, the honest, and the sharing. Otherwise, you're just regurgitating and rearranging some stuff that people can read. But when it comes from the heart, from your real divine reflection,
right.
And then when you share that, man, that's medicine to people.
Right. And especially when it's like inspired in the moment.
Yeah.
Through connection to God within. That's always flowing into the originality. It's like when you hear like a really good musician, they may play the same song many times, but every time you hear it, it feels like they're playing it for the first time because it has that immediacy, that reality, that soulfulness that connects with others. You know, it's like almost like a form of communication of spirit. And that's like super satisfying. Yeah,
I agree. All right, well, you want to read this?
Yeah, let's go on to the next one. So this one's a little more philosophical, and this is from a paper in the book where they're talking about the Supreme, which is the emerging deity of experience. And they say that I love when the Urantia Book puts our ordinary day-to-day life in a grand scenario. You know, it reframes our sense of what's ordinary into a much greater sense of importance. So this is a kind of a quote that does that. That's why I like it so much. It says, the great struggle of this universe age, which is the age of the Supreme, is between the potential and the actual. The seeking for actualization by all that is as yet unexpressed. So you think about each one of us, how much there is that's as yet unexpressed in our potential.
Dude, I think of the millions and billions of sperm cells that are like unexpressed. Are you kidding me? There's so much potential expression on this planet.
Yeah.
Potential to actual. Therein lies the pressure. And then what can that pressure form something good? Right.
And within ourselves as well.
Absolutely. That pressure is within us too.
Yeah. So of course, in the Urantia Book, our lifetimes are projected out into eternity. That isn't just this world. It isn't just this life. We have a whole future ahead of us. And through all of that, there's going to be an expression of as of yet unexpressed potentials. Right. So in terms of to think of authenticity in those terms, I think is really helpful, because that's kind of the path or the gateway to opening up this potential for expressing more today than yesterday. That more potential has been actualized today than existed yesterday. And that's going to continue tomorrow. And there's a growth there. There's a realization of possibilities.
Yeah,
I
appreciate you saying that, because it maintains a level of practice and consistency so that there is growth there.
Yes.
Consistent growth. There's not like breaking down and starting new every time. I mean, there's quality of having an open, teachable mind, maybe a beginner's mind or whatever, if you will, some parts. But if you're starting from scratch every moment, every day or whatever, then there isn't a consistency of integrity that is bonded.
Right. Yeah.
That isn't bonded to that can have the material and spiritual, intellectual integrity to withstand eternity.
Well, and to have continuity.
Yeah.
That's part of what you're talking about here.
Right.
And then what this quote is talking about too is we have continuity coming through from the past into the present. But that's what enabled, somewhere else they say that for everything that we actualize, it creates new potentials. Right. Every actualization creates new potentials. So if you learn how to play scale on an instrument, then that opens up the potential of maybe mixing up the notes a little bit and doing a melody instead of just a scale, right? But you have to know where the notes are first, that kind of thing. So in all kinds of ways, that's kind of the reality of our situation. But it's so exciting because we don't really know. We don't have a full picture of the destiny.
Well, as the Urantia Book says, the act is ours, the consequence is God's. So all we're all really asked to do is act authentically. And then the potentials that come from that,
right,
man,
right, and be true to ourselves as we're doing that, right. So that's a cool one. And then should we go to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this a couple more along the same lines about our potential for self-expression, the authentic self idea. So there's a pair of quotes here that I think are interesting how they relate to each other. So the first one says, the universe fact of God's becoming man. Now, what they're talking about there is Jesus. So God became human through the life of Jesus. So they're saying that the universe fact that this happened, that God became human and lived among us, has forever changed all meanings and altered all values of human personality. Meaning that Jesus has shown us our own potential in a way that we've never seen before. So in terms of this idea of the flow from potential to actual, Jesus demonstrated he's the way, the truth, and the life. I mean, he's shown us a potential for ourselves that we wouldn't be able to know otherwise. He's like kind of a revelation.
Quite the demonstration.
Of our own nature. And then they go on to say, this is from back to the paper about celestial artisans, they say that, and every God-knowing man or angel, man, woman, or angel, possesses the potential of unlimited self-expression on ever-progressive levels of unified self-realization. So this is pointing again into eternity and our potential for unlimited self-expression on ever-progressive levels of unified self-realization.
So I like that it talks about you can have unlimited self-expression, but there's got to be progressive levels of unified self-realization
to go with that.
Yeah, right. Because otherwise you don't understand. Goes back to this, is it's unbridled self-liberty expression, or is it understanding that you're part of a melody or a harmony, that your expression is needed, but it's also there's is this expression respectful to the greatest amount of people, the greatest amount of good, the greatest amount of
contributing to the orchestra?
Is it bringing true value? Yeah. Or is it just me trying to shut everything down and just solo?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's times and places maybe where solo efforts are important, but even then, the value of it is related to its unification. So in other words, it's unified with purpose, it's unified with the greater good, it's unified by the values of truth, beauty, and goodness and all that. And this is where kind of the originality comes in too, because originality has an inherently unifying quality. So the fact that we have the originality of spirit within us and the originality's potential of our personalities, if we exercise those, that'll unify our self-realization.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, in other words, there's a center, there's a core around which our growth and self-realization and identity develops. And it's important to hold that center as we expand our reach.
Yeah, going back to center.
Yeah.
That's this. To me, I feel like going back to center is that breath work, that deep checking in from the core of yourself, as I already said like a couple times in this show. But this is coming back to the authentic self so that you can really have faith and confidence that your choice to do this is going to bring out a better outcome, a better expression, and everything. And
it's connected. That we do nothing entirely on our own.
Right.
That we're connected to circuits of mind and spirit and all of these other gifts of universe reality.
So perhaps that like picture in your mind of when you're going back to center, this focus is that not only are you calming and stabilizing and reminding yourself and cleaning yourself of your authenticity, but you're also plugging into something greater, which is also your authenticity.
Something greater than yourself.
So you're also plugging in. And
you're connecting,
picture.
literally
You're
connecting.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book uses the word circuits hundreds of times. And that's kind of the best term they had. And that's so interesting to me because the Urantia Book, a lot of it is about religion. But the older religious traditions on this planet were all kind of pre-modern in the sense that they didn't have concepts like circuits, because these, even in the 30s, that was still kind of an early expression of technology. But it's very important because it gives us a way of understanding how we can connect and communicate across a distance with deity presence, which otherwise might be kind of hard for people to grasp that that's actually possible. But now we're getting even
with Wi-Fi. So
now it's even, with Wi-Fi and smartphones, we just take it for granted every day. It's like, whoa, here's this thing. Yeah.
That reminds me of that other quote that you read of, the wisdom of the world.
Yeah.
These phones and stuff. Well, we could learn as an example, but don't get too caught up in these things.
Yeah.
Remember, the inner broadcast is way cooler.
It's a good metaphor for what's true about us.
Right.
It's interesting how our technologies are always an extension of what's already true about us. Like inventing a microscope is kind of an extension of our ability to see. It's the same thing with all these technologies.
These are all products of mind creations.
Right. But they also show us something that's already true about ourselves. That's kind of what's fascinating about it. So we could go on to these last couple slides that have to do with kind of the value aspirations that can govern our authenticity and make our authenticity more real and more true. So one of the biggest ones that the book points to and that came up on my list at the beginning is sincerity. So this is the Urantia Book. This is in actually they're talking about angels in this paper, but they point out that for us, the keys of the kingdom, meaning the keys to our spiritual growth in true reality, are sincerity, more sincerity, and more sincerity. It's like, okay, there's a rhetorical emphasis here going, about sincerity. It's like super important. The highest moral choice is the choice of the highest possible value. And always, in any sphere, in all of them, this is to choose to do the will of God. So combining those two comments together, we can see that the sincerity of our relationship with God is what really unfolds our capacity to make these high moral choices and these high quality decisions.
Yeah. Well, you could be sincere to your material needs. Like I sincerely wanted to kick his butt. You know what I mean? So I did it.
Well, that's something else.
You were sincere, but you're not sincere to your authentic self here. Yeah. Because being authentic really is when you're choosing to do the will of God.
Right.
And that's your real authentic self. Those are your superpowers.
That's the highest possible value in any sphere, in all of them. Is to choose to do the will of God. And the thing that's interesting about that is we don't necessarily know what that is. Right. But we can still choose to do it. In other words, it can be the active desire in our minds to do the will of God, even if we don't know what it is. You can still decide that, yes, I want to do that. Right. Which is kind of what they're talking about here. We don't have to wait on knowing what it is to choose to do it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And that's, I think, often gets sort of lost in this idea of doing the will of God. And what makes that real is our sincerity, that we sincerely want to do the will of God.
We sincerely want to do God's
So that's
will.
what brings us into relationship with God, is our sincerity toward God. If you're praying or trying to worship or whatever, and you're insincere, you're not going to get much of a connection. But if you're really sincere, if you say, God, I really, really want to be with you right now, and be able to express that and make it real and sincere, then all kinds of possibilities that can become real in ways that it never was before. There can be that opening up of the flow from potential to actual in our relationship with God, but it depends on this. That's why they say it 3 times. Yeah. And that's our path to authenticity.
And then it can become more consistent and it can grow,
become
more comfortable.
Right.
more authentic.
Yeah. Every time you do it, it gets a little better.
Yeah.
You remember the last time and said, wow, that was really cool. I want to do that again.
Right.
And then it gets a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little more true, a little more full, a little more real. Yeah.
All right.
So we could go on to this last one.
Yeah.
So again, we got two quotes, and I kind of like how these two go together. So there's, in the first one, it says, the great problem of religious living, and here again, we're talking about personal religion, not institutional religion, this whole idea of being true to spirit within ourselves. The great problem of religious living consists in the task of unifying the soul powers of the personality by the dominance of love. And I'll just go ahead and read the second one, and we could maybe just chat for a second about how they relate to each other. And then in another part of the book about our Urantia life, when we go on to the next life, they say that one of the things we're going to be learning about in Urantia philosophy is that righteousness, which is being good, being true, strikes the harmony chords of truth, and the melody vibrates throughout the cosmos, even to the recognition of the infinite.
I love that quote.
Yeah, I do too. So melody, they're talking about self-expression almost taking the form of melody, even if you're not a musician, that there's a melody to righteousness and the harmony chords of truth. I mean, there's such an interesting combinations of language here that point us in a direction, but all of it is dependent on our unifying our powers of selfhood by the dominance of love.
Well, I like how, when you're saying our powers of selfhood, and that quote is talking about unifying the soul powers.
Yes.
It still keeps harping on this self and soul. Self-soul, like you are the soul. So unifying that, what that means, even just being curious about what that means, and asking God to maybe show you what that means. Right.
Yeah. And that love is the ultimate unifying value in all cosmic reality. That's the sort of the key to all of this. So, in other words, to be an authentic self, you have to be loving. You can't be authentic, really, in relation to God or people you know or the world or whatever, if you don't have a loving attitude.
Well, we could say God is loving, and maybe the conductor of this righteous melody that's being played, a huge, grand universe harmony melody concert.
Yeah, right.
And then we have a part to play in it.
We sure do.
Yeah.
We each have a contribution.
Right on.
So love is the desire to do good to others. It's the definition, more or less, it's offered in the Urantia book. So that points to service, it points to caring, it points to being helpful, points to being open to others, all these good qualities.
And I would say
of relationship.
And remember that for yourself too.
Right.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Be loving to yourself. Forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Because God is there doing that inside you, doing all those things too. Right. And that's being authentic.
And have a generosity of heart.
Yeah.
Toward ourselves and toward God and toward others, our brothers and sisters. But to just say, oh, how can I help? What can I do? I want this things to be better.
Yeah, just showing up.
Showing up with that motivation.
90% and a good attitude,
and that desire. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how they put that definition. Love is the desire to do good to others. It isn't even the doing of the good. It's the desire to do good.
Right.
So that's key. But that's where we have some control, where our decisions can make a difference. We can decide to cultivate that kind of desire within ourselves. And that's going to be a connector. That's going to connect us to God.
Amen. Well, I pray for authenticity for all of you guys at home. And thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing the workshop.
Yeah, I hope this has been helpful.
I hope it has been. And if you guys maybe have some thoughts on this, leave some comments. Or if you have any ideas for maybe some topics that you might want some help in studying, maybe we can do a deep dive on it or something like that in the future. But we appreciate all the support, and stick around. Please subscribe if you haven't yet on our YouTube.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Chuck.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks you guys at home, and we'll see you next time.
All right.